Welcome back, everybody. As a reminder, please submit questions through the app. We will prioritize those. I am pleased to introduce Karen Larson, who's VP of Technology and Partnership Strategy from Axiad, to speak to us about the 31 flavors of strong authentication. Welcome, Karen.
Thanks. Hey, hello, everyone. I know I'm last, and we're going to talk about food right before lunch, so that's always risky, I think. So just to give you some background about this whole concept for this talk came out of a conversation I was having with my team. And what we were discussing is all of the different mechanisms, all the different ways that you can implement FIDO, and just how many decisions people have to make, not only just in terms of a passwordless strategy, but then in terms of also picking kind of the right flavor of FIDO for you. So one of the guys on my team said, oh, well, it's kind of like, the old Baskin-Robbins logo of like the 31 flavors, and you have all these different choices, and there's all these different considerations you have to make. So I thought it was a great title for a talk and kind of went with it. So we're going to talk about ice cream, and we're going to talk about FIDO, and then I'll send you all off for lunch. It'll be perfect. All right. So just to give you some background, like I said, we're thinking about FIDO in terms of flavors. And everybody has different choices. Everybody has a preference. There's all sorts of different options out there, right? When you get into the ice cream shop, you look at the case, all sorts of choices in there. So how do you pick, really? For this talk, since I only had 20 minutes, we're only focusing on 3 flavors. So I realize that's false advertising right off the bat, but that's what we're going to do. But the 3 flavors we're going to talk about are the syncable passkeys, device-bound passkeys, and then we're also going to talk about U2F a little bit as well. So hopefully, on day 2 of this conference, everybody has a vague concept of what a syncable passkey is versus a device-bound passkey. So I'm going to kind of go through this slide really quickly. Syncable passkeys are typically just that. They are backed by some kind of service that will allow you to copy them, move them around, also provide that recoverability for you as well. Device-bound passkeys are typically on a device. So that could be a phone, it could be a laptop, it could be something like a security key. And then the one that we haven't talked about a lot here is what's called U2F, or Universal Second Factor. And what that allows you to do is to add on FIDO to an existing user ID and password flow. So that can be a great option, especially when you're trying to backport into, say, like a legacy application that's bound to having that password and user ID as part of the login process. The thing we're going to talk about mostly in this talk is how to figure out your flavor. For those of you that were in the last session with Dean, he did a great job laying out technically what those decisions are, but there's a lot of business process decisions that go into this as well. How many of us have made what we thought was a really great security decision, and then when we rolled it out, got a call from our business partners that told us that it wasn't working quite the way that we had thought it would? I think maybe everybody in this room, possibly. So when we're thinking about rolling out FIDO, and we're thinking about that in terms of your passwordless journey, part of what you need to be considering, part of what you need to be thinking about is also how that impacts the business. I worked for Costco for a little while. I worked on a project where we were assessing our supply chain systems. And what the head of the supply chain told me, he said, hey, you're the IT experts, go do whatever you need. But whatever it is, you can't slow my team down. I don't care what you put in place, but we have metrics. We know how long our business processes take, almost down to the second. And anything you add to that means that we're less efficient. So you can do whatever you want. You can upgrade systems, whatever, but you can't add time. So that can be really critical to think about. The good thing about looking at something like FIDO is it's typically less time. So people are reducing the time they spend in terms of login. That can be a great data point for justifying passwordless projects. So if you're thinking about it in terms of like a finance team, where they're going to be logging in multiple times per day. You can calculate out what your ROI, what your savings are, and be able to help that justify your processes and your project. The other thing that I think people kind of overlook is they get very excited about FIDO. And I've seen this happen where they're like, yep, we're all in. We're getting rid of passwords. We're going to turn them off. We're moving everybody to FIDO. We're just going to do it wall to wall. And they don't take the time to understand their applications, especially legacy applications. So looking at things like ERP systems, HR systems, some of those backbone systems for your business. All of that needs to be evaluated. So they'll do this project, they'll put out the metric, they'll say, yep, by end of Q2, say, we're all in on FIDO, going all in, we're gonna turn off passwords, we'll be fine. And then all of a sudden, 3 weeks later, they're backpedaling because they didn't realize that HR is on this legacy system that's been there forever, probably is not gonna update quickly. So, make sure that you're doing that assessment first. That's really, really, really critical. The other thing is to think about devices. So, since FIDO can be device-bound, what devices people are using matters. And it also matters what OS layers people are on. There's slightly different implementations depending if you're on an Android phone versus an iPhone versus a Windows PC. So you need to be looking at that holistically for your organization as well. I put kiosks on here in italics because coming from retail and having some experience in manufacturing, that kiosk concept is very prevalent. So if you're thinking about it in terms of like a frontline worker scenario, you may have like a shared PC that's back in the inventory, back in the stock room. But you're going to have multiple people logging into that, and you're going to have multiple people logging in that have different functions. Somebody that's in maintenance, maybe just checking out parts. The stockroom clerk is going to be doing inventory. Those are different roles. They're different levels of access, and you need to think about how your FIDO credentialing is going to work with that. Part of that can be a really great solution is to do something like security keys or like a smart card form factor so that you can have people logging in to the same kiosk, same device. But just be aware. A lot of our projects start with IT, and IT is typically one person, one computer, one person, one phone. We have to think about these things broader if we're going to bring them to our enterprises and bring them into our organization. The other box to think about, too, is security. And I know Dean covered part of this in his talk prior, so I won't go too far in depth into this. But really think about what industry you're in. What are those compliance boxes you need to check? What AAL levels are going to correspond to that? And how do you make that work? And not everybody may need the same AAL level, so make sure you're taking that into consideration too. Different user populations may have different access, they may have different needs. So, think about this as like, if you're looking at that, ice cream flavor analogy, you may have some users that are vanilla, you may have some users that are more of a rocky road, and part of your job is to figure out what makes sense for those users. And then the last piece is groups. Like who is it that you're trying to secure? Who is it that you're trying to get that FIDO and passwordless adoption out to? How you approach that for, say, a customer is going to be different than how you're going to do it for an employee, or how maybe you would do it for like a privileged access user, IT admins, anybody that's a high-value target as part of your organization. So make sure you're thinking about these things, and then keep in mind, like, not all the flavors are going to work for everybody. So this is what I hope you avoid. Nobody likes dropping their ice cream on the ground. So I hope that some of those topics will help you make the right choices for your organizations and how you approach this. Just know too, like not all combinations work well together. If we're talking about a legacy ERP system, that may not work well with a completely passwordless option, but it may be a good fit for something like U2F. So make sure that you're thinking about those and balancing those, so you don't end up with like the person that drops their ice cream on the floor. The other thing to keep in mind is that, the nice thing with FIDO is that you can mix and match. So since there are all these options, there are all these decisions that you can make, you can get the advantages of that strong security for authentication, but you don't have to do it all the same way. And part of the issue that I see is, people will come to a conference like this, get really excited, which I hope you do, and go back to your organizations and be like, yep, we're going passwordless. And they think about it in terms of what works for them, instead of taking the time to say, go talk to finance, go talk to supply chain. See how your frontline workers are actually authenticating on a daily basis, and really figure out what works for them. So you may need like a mixed solution. This could be a 3-scoop solution, it might be a 2-scoop solution, but feel free to mix and match. It's really okay. All right, and then the final thought I have for you is, ice cream makes you happy. This is from a local ice cream shop in Seattle. And then FIDO can make you happy and make you secure. All right.
All right, thank you, Karen. I don't see any questions on the app. Does anyone in the room have a question they'd like to ask? No? Thank you very much.
All right.